In, but we'll get started here. My name's Aaron Kacharski. I wanted to welcome everybody to the vote recovery session. We're focusing on a couple different regions across the country. This is the seventh or eighth vote recovery session we've done throughout the election season. And today we're focusing on South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And welcome everybody. We still have people coming in. Working with the Recovery app. My name is Aaron Kacharski. I've been doing some work with Recovery Advocacy Project and really working to raise the grassroots voices of people in recovery, family members, and supporters of recovery throughout the states. We're really focused on thinking and acting locally. And so we're about giving people the community organizing skills to do their own self-advocacy in their communities, because the things that are happening in our communities varies drastically throughout the country. And so we're working to empower people to have their voices heard and to think as community organizers. And one of the things that we started doing is this idea of vote recovery. And the idea of vote recovery came about at a town hall meeting we did in Pennsylvania in May or June. And one of the participants had asked, how close are we to having recovery be a single voter issue? And so when you think about single voter issues, you think about the environment or guns or reproductive rights. Like those are issues that motivate people into activism, motivate people to cast a ballot. And the conversation we had at that town hall way back in May was pretty interesting, that conversation. So we wanted to duplicate that and have that conversation across the country. And we started asking these questions, what does it mean to be a recovery voter? What are the issues that people in recovery care about? And so this session is not about political party. It's not about candidates, specific candidates. This is really about the voter. And so everybody here, we're just, part of vote recovery is having people go through that process for themselves of what's important to you as somebody who's going to vote or get involved in your community, and are the candidates that are running for the office earning your vote, right? Because we are an organized voting bloc across this country. I use the word organized, we're working on that part, but there's a lot of us that care about these issues. And we actually did some polling on this, and we actually polled 1,200 likely voters. So these are registered voters, and they didn't necessarily have a connection to addiction recovery or mental health. And they were asked if they would consider crossing party lines to vote for a candidate that had a more attractive stance on mental health issues and addiction recovery. And 42% of those voters said yes. And another 28% had said, we'd consider it. And about another 20% said no. They straight up said no. And so that actually tells us that people are motivated by this issue. And so there's that piece of it. And then we asked the same question to our people, people in recovery, and family members and supporters. We asked them if they would consider crossing party lines to vote for a candidate that supported recovery. And close to 90%, it's well over 80% said yes. And so when you ask us, that number jumps sky high. But then the other thing that we ask people is, do you know where your candidates stand on these issues? And 50% of us said no. And so on one hand, we'd say, yeah, we'd support the more attractive candidate on the issues that I care about. But on the other hand, we haven't really done the research. And so part of vote recovery is for us to dive into that for ourselves. And so at the end, after we listened to some amazing recovery voters, we are going to show you, we built a recovery voter hub, and it's an online portal. It has every single thing you can imagine in terms of diving deeper into the issues. You can register to vote there if your state allows for online registration. It has registration dates, deadlines. You can look up your polling location. You can get sample ballots in some cases, and you can do some research on some of the candidates that are running um, locally. And so we want everybody to keep that in mind, that part of vote recovery is about every single one of us taking some time and doing the research before we cast our ballot. And so that's all I have to say from Recovery Advocacy Project. But you're going to hear from some recovery voters. And also, I want to thank the organizing team for, you know, things like events like this just don't come out of nowhere. People organized it. So I wanted to thank all the organizers that are on the call today. And one of them is going to be moderating the event tonight, and I will turn things over to Leslie. Thanks, everyone. Stick around for the voter hub at the end.
Hey everybody, my name is Leslie Lubell. I work here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I work with people struggling with addiction and trying to get into recovery every day. So this is super important to me. I'm also what I call a triple threat with recovery from substance use, eating disorder, and mental illness. So I'm really, really excited that we've got some amazing people here that I think have some really important things to share. And I do want to remind people that this is actually recorded and it's on YouTube, on the WRAP YouTube channel. So if there are people that didn't get to make it to this, you can still share it with them, post it on your social media, make sure people hear all about it. So our first speaker, I'm super excited about. So his name's Jeff Walker. He is in long-term recovery. He is a peer support specialist and certified recovery coach in North Carolina. He is formerly incarcerated and has used his justice involvement to help others. So he's the program director of a recovery community organization in North Carolina. And he is, from what I understand, a first-time voter, and he's going to share with us a little bit about his experience. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Leslie, for that kind introduction. Hang on just a second. Having technical difficulties. So I am an individual in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is I haven't put drugs or alcohol into my system since June 12, 2014. Because of that, I am a productive member of society. I'm a father. I'm able to commit to a relationship. I'm employable. And my new milestone is I'm a voter. So I'm really proud of that. At the age of 43, I'm a first-time voter. All that's got to do with my past incarceration and in criminal justice history. In the state of North Carolina, your voter rights are taken while incarcerated, on probation, parole, or you owe fees, fines, or restitution. So most of my adult life, I've not been able to vote because of this. I felt like while I was incarcerated, I had lost my voice, that my voice didn't matter. And today, because of recovery, I know that my voice does matter, and so does my vote. I was speaking to, I'm on fire for this stuff, and I was speaking to a group of individuals this week, this inner program kind of, so to speak, and I was able to get like 7 or 8 first-time registered voters. We got them registered and got them where they can vote. And that was awesome for them. They was eligible, but what was tough is there's a group over here while I'm speaking that they could not vote. You know what I mean? They were still failing. They were still on probation. And I remember how that felt, you know what I mean, early in my recovery, and felt like their voice didn't matter. You know, vote recovery is important to me because I would like to see systematic change at the federal, at the state, and at our local levels. You know, I'm passionate about my recovery, and I'm passionate about voting. I think today that because of my recovery, that I have hit many milestones. I would like to see recovery, at a top priority, like a single vote recovery, what we've been talking about, because in my opinion, it's just my opinion, that the opioid epidemic, the so-called war on drugs, what's the solution? Recovery. So why it's so hard to get from down to the bottom up to the top, I don't know, but I think it takes a collective impact, like all of us being here tonight, to talk about this and to raise this topic and to draw attention from all these different states. So I'm very grateful and honored to be a part of this virtual town hall meeting tonight. I think this is how we make a difference. And I'll end it with this. We do recover and we do vote. And if you're in recovery or you know someone that's in recovery, please advocate to them that their voice does matter, and to continue to try to take that process and those steps to where they can they vote, because their vote matters and their voice matters. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was really powerful. And I think the idea of nothing about us without us, I think is it's my favorite phrase, because it really encapsulates that we don't want people making decisions that impact our community without our input. So thank you so much. I'm excited for you to get to vote. I hope you don't have to stand in like a 9-hour line, but I'm excited for you. The next person that we're going to hear from is Mark Mitchell. Mark is the CEO and founder of Chainless Change, Inc. And I highly encourage you to check out the website for Chainless Change, because it's really cool. And it says that they're committed to reducing recidivism and strengthening the fabric of society through advocacy and support for individuals and families who are negatively impacted by the criminal justice system. So this is a really phenomenal place and program that does some really cool things. Mark identifies as being in long-term recovery from behavioral health conditions, and he is located and serves the Miami-Dade and Broward County areas in Florida. So take it away, Mark.
Hey, good evening. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Mark Mitchell. I am the CEO and founder of Chainless Change. We are an emerging recovery community that's located in South Florida. We serve Miami and Fort Lauderdale area. For me, I am extremely interested in voting recovery. And it has a different meaning for me. Similar to Jeff, I was involved in the criminal legal system. Before I turned 23 years old, I had spent nearly 7 years incarcerated. So much of my childhood was in that system, as well as my early adulthood. And so I understand the importance of having an opportunity at a second chance. I have this saying where I believe that second chances change everything. We have shirts within our organization that all of our peers wear and participants in our program wear, because we really believe in the power of second chances and the power of redemption. People are able to change. And I believe that voting recovery is about allowing people an opportunity to access second chances. With nearly, with over 2.5 million people cycling in and out of institutions, correctional institutions throughout the country each year, and so many more having criminal backgrounds across the country, I think that it's important to really hone in what does it mean for folk to be able to recover from behavioral health conditions, mental health addiction, as well as the traumas associated with the criminal legal system and a lot of the barriers that people face. And so for me, voting recovery means having increased access to behavioral health services, both addiction services, peer support recovery support services, as well as counseling. And so I'll look for legislators who are advocates for behavioral health services and increasing access to behavioral health services. I believe that it should be low barrier. And so my focus is often wanting to know where do people stand when it comes to mental health, and ensuring that people with mental health and addictions are not incarcerated or punished because of their condition, but instead connected to opportunities to receive the treatment that's necessary to rebuild their lives. Secondly, I would say banning the box is a priority for me. With so many barriers after contact with the criminal legal system, it is extremely difficult to reground yourself, to rebuild your life. And a huge part of my recovery process has been being able to find meaningful employment. I started off working with as a customer service representative for Linux National Account Service, and I ended up transitioning to the operations director for that company. And I really believe that a huge part of me being able to stay sober, a huge part of me being able to remain free from committing crimes was feeling as if I had employment that was meaningful. I was able to be self-sufficient and add value to the company as well as my community. And so banning the box, increasing access to employment opportunities is extremely important for folk who are seeking to recover and rebuild their lives. Next, I would say housing justice. In Florida, it's extremely challenging for folk to be able to access housing if they have a criminal records. There are subsidized housing communities throughout the state, as well as HOAs, which are private properties that are managed by community homeowner associations. Those folk have rules, and their rules are people with criminal backgrounds can't live here. So that leaves folk who are in recovery, and so many people, I believe that the Bureau of Justice Statistics reports about 65% of folk who have been incarcerated identify as folk with histories of addiction. And so that leaves so many people who are returning to our community, seeking to recover, and not having an opportunity to even access the most basic essential, which is housing. And so we want to be sure that we are advocating for increased housing opportunities, especially affordable housing opportunities, and supporting legislators who are going to be advocates for housing justice. And then I'll talk about diversion. I think that, again, folk end up being incarcerated. They end up spending tons of time and taking and also costing taxpayers a lot of money, right? Incarcerating folk. But it takes so much of your life. It drains the family, it tears families apart. And I do believe that most crimes are crimes of poverty or crimes that are associated with behavioral health conditions. Police should not be first responders to people who have behavioral health conditions. They should not be, incarceration should not be the first response to people who have histories of addiction. And instead, we should look at opportunities to divert people from the criminal legal system and connect them to treatment and services that are necessary. So voting recovery for me is definitely about increasing opportunities for people to divert from the criminal legal system and connect to services that will allow them to maintain wellness and rebuild their lives. And lastly, family unification. Addiction, mental health challenges, incarceration tears families apart. I grew up in a family where my mom, I didn't know her until I was about 7 years old. She'd been incarcerated. She dealt with mental health conditions. So if she was not in jail, she was inside of mental health institutions. I didn't even know who she was. And as a result, throughout our entire life, we have been trying to reconnect, my siblings and I, with our family. And I just understand that these issues tear families apart. And in order to support recovery, we have to look at creating opportunities for social supports to be connected, for families to remain engaged in the process and receive the support that they need to be able to know how to support their loved ones in their addiction, in their mental health crisis, and during incarceration. So for me, voting recovery, it's all about allowing an opportunity for people to have second chances at life, rebuild their life, and access a basic essentials and improved access to an improved quality of life. And so I am always about looking to legislators and holding legislators accountable for the decisions that they make that impact our everyday lives. Because in order to recover, we need to have access to the basic essentials that everyone else needs. We need to have food, we need to have housing, we need to be a part of community, become self-sufficient through employment opportunities or access to education, and have opportunities to be diverted from the criminal legal system. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk. I really appreciate it. You all have a great one.
Thank you so much. God, you fit a lot into like less than 10 minutes. That was amazing. And everything you talked about is so important. And I think when we're talking to people in our communities who maybe don't understand addiction and recovery and mental illness, I think we have to remind them that everything that Mark just talked about impacts the entire community. It doesn't just impact people in recovery or people in the criminal justice system. It really trickles down into every part of our community and ends up benefiting all of us, and not just people in the criminal justice system or people in recovery. So thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing with your program in Florida. We need to bring you up here to Georgia, please. Okay, so I'm really excited to introduce this next speaker because she's a personal friend of mine. Rayanne Glaze is a woman in long-term recovery, and she's been working in treatment for the last 14 years, but she doesn't just work in treatment. She runs all of the program for women and children here in the state of Georgia that are funded through the DBHDD. She does incredible work. She is a phenomenal human being and she helps a lot of people. And so I'm really excited to hear her share with us what she has to say.
Thank you, Leslie. And I really, just hearing Mark just makes me excited again, because I feel like sometimes we miss that message that it's basic needs that we need to really look at. So for me, I needed to look at what inspires me to get out and vote, and making sure that that's not an option for me. I have to get out and get my vote. But there was a time in my addiction where I really didn't feel like what I thought or how I felt really mattered, because I didn't have my rights to vote. So before they were restored, I struggled with understanding issues and policies and how they affected me. And if I wanted change, how could I promote that? And I started to do something that I don't do very often, and I shut up and listen. And I still have to practice that a lot, because it's not my gift. But I found out that I didn't have to be right all the time, and my experiences weren't the experience of everyone else. And I needed to honor and acknowledge the differences that we all share, so that we could have those tough conversations, so that we could find the compromise in the middle ground, because recovery is on both sides of the aisle. And I want to be really kind of transparent and clear on that, just because we have candidates now, and Georgia's early voting started yesterday, which I went ahead and, got that out of the way before I heard anything else. But I think that it's important to note that recovery is on both sides. So when I think about recovery as a single voter issue, I really suggest that people get involved in their community on the local, state, and federal level, so that the candidate that you chose, or the one that represents your community, understands the values that we share. And it's all those things Mark and Jeff talked about that are so important. But a lot of people don't understand anything but the train wreck of addiction. And I think that is changing, which is good. In Georgia, we've had this huge movement on recovery being possible, and the voice of recovery being important. And at the table, at almost every table that I go to, someone is going to share the story of recovery, because there is nothing about us without us. And that saying, every time I start to make decisions for programs and things that I have to do in my day job, I try to remember, who are the people that I'm serving, and what did they think? So just don't forget that your voice is important, whether you have your rights restored or not. So the voice of recovery will reflect hope and possibility. And that's what should be available to everyone. And the people that may not understand that still need to hear that. For myself, what inspired me the most was the barriers that women face. And when I say women, I want to be a little bit clearer, because I recognize women, individuals that identify as women as well. So equal rights and those kind of things that we're still struggling with after 100 years of challenges. We still have equal opportunity, equal employment opportunity challenges. 26% of women still make less than men. No offense, men, but that's a problem when you're seeking recovery and you're coming into the workforce, maybe for the first time, and maybe you have children or you have a family. It's a huge struggle. And so those are issues that I want to make sure my candidate always hears. We still have healthcare challenges. We still have equal rights that we need to discuss. Um, I started paying attention, and granted, when I got my rights restored, it wasn't during the perfect storm of challenges like 2020 has been. I mean, we have every issue at the table, and they all have recovery at the center. And we have public health, we have equal rights, we have, I mean, just everything. Women's reproductive rights, everything is at the table during this election. So being sure that your voice is heard is really important at this time. I want to encourage young people to speak up. I have a 22-year-old, this is his first election, and we watched the debates together, and I saw his little face, and he was just like, what do I do? And I said, well, this is what you do. What issues does it bring up for you? Whether you have your rights to vote or not. I keep saying that because I was in that place one time where I felt like I didn't have a voice. You still have a voice. Your place in the community is important, and make sure that you're having those conversations. For me, in my own lived experience, that gender equality was something I couldn't just ignore. As I kind of advanced in my education, I went from a high school dropout to a master's degree, and I was still facing these barriers on how do I advance in the field? How can I hone my skills to support others seeking recovery whenever I'm still trying to stand up for the injustices that are across the country? So like equal employment opportunities, I was a military veteran. I'm a military veteran from the Army. And in that time, that was not even a topic of discussion. Today, I think things have improved, but we always need to fight for people to have that livable wage, to make sure that they're getting fair wage so that they can get those things that Mark talked about, like housing, affordable housing, being able to support your family, being able to be self-sufficient. Those kind of things are what I want my candidates to represent and to hear their plan, how they're going to improve that. And that's kind of what I told my son and what I want to encourage everyone to really do. Don't use the misinformation and the information that you may hear from your family, your friends, Facebook, social media. Go to your candidate's page, go and see their plan. Most of the ones we were able to get I shared with my son a sample ballot and what we have for our community so that he could kind of research and look. I don't want him to think like me. I want him to think like him. And I told him, I said, start looking at what's important to you. And some of his issues that are important to him are different than mine. And so looking at your candidate's plan, their page, how do they lift up prevention, education, treatment, and recovery services? Is it even on their plan? That's something that I have found that is a little discouraging. Like some of it's not even brought up, but some of these other issues trickle into that, like housing, like having a livable wage, like equal opportunity employment, like gender equality. Those kind of things are going to matter. Seek out individuals in your community that you may not agree with, but I think it's a good place for us to really start. So if I sit around with like-minded people with me, like with you guys, I'm sitting here thinking, I want Mark to come over one night so we could talk. I want Jeff in my, in my circle. Like these are my people. But what I really want to do is hear the experiences and the feelings of everyone, because it's a consensus and a partnership that I want to build in my community. We're not always going to agree. That's okay. But we all have the same vision. We want healthy families and safe communities. That's what we all want. And so we want people to be able to thrive and to seek recovery and to get well. And it's not going to happen in a bubble. If it's not going to happen with all of us just sitting around, it's going to happen with us kind of mobilizing and getting out there. One thing I'll brag about Georgia, we have a huge, and I'm sure you'll hear some of that. We have a huge recovery movement going on where we're doing just that. We're opening these recovery community organizations. We're starting all these and supporting all these community coalitions so that people can get together and say, how are we going to make our community safe, stable, and help people get well, regardless of how you feel about your political choice. So I think that's my message today is I just want to encourage you to do your own research, look at your candidate that you may be choosing, look at their plans. It may sound different than what they tweet or speak or whatever. It may sound different, but their plans are what really matters, and make sure that your interests are on that plan, because if they're not, it's time for us to all really get involved. That's it.
You did not disappoint, because you're amazing and I love you. So I wanted to just say a couple of things really quickly before we move on. You know, the things that we're voting on now, especially as it relates to mental health and addiction and all the things we're talking about, you know, we're really at the very beginning of the mental health crisis that we're going to see as a result of everything that's happened in 2020. We are going to continue. That is going to continue. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to be, you know, doom and gloom. It's just the truth. We've already seen huge spikes in overdoses and hospitalizations and suicides and all of those things. And that's going to continue happening. And so this is our chance right now. We don't get to do this for another 4 years, at least at the federal level, and another 2 years in most of our local municipalities and states. Now is the time. We have to vote for people that are going to represent those interests, and make sure that access is expanded and we're continued to be represented for the next couple of years as people continue to need that kind of support. And the other thing is that you still have a voice even if you can't vote. And I think, you know, a lot of what you talked about, Rayanne, about getting out there and just talking about these issues and doing the research, the more we talk about this stuff, the more people realize why it matters. And so we definitely have a voice when we vote, but we have a voice even if we're not voting, because we can impact the people in our communities and educate them. And the last thing I wanted to say is that all of the things you talked about when we are creating positive impact in our communities and recovery community organizations and being vocal in legislation, is we're killing stigma when we do that, because we're showing people that this is what recovery looks like, that their image of, you know, the mass produced, you know, media that shows, you know, a guy on a bench with a bottle in a bag or living under a bridge. That's not always what this looks like. Recovery looks like people like Rayanne and me and Aaron and Jeff and Mark and all of these other people. And I think that's important too. So thank you so much, Rayanne. You're the best. Okay, so our next speaker is Michael Cooper Jr. And he is it says he was born and raised in North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. I don't know where that is, but he's in Raleigh now. So he is an attorney and a journalist, and he was a 2020 Presidential Leadership Scholar. And apparently that is a fellowship hosted by the George W. Bush Center, the Clinton Center, the George and Barbara Bush Foundation, and the LBJ Foundation. So we talk about being nonpartisan. That's pretty nonpartisan. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say, Michael. Welcome.
Sorry, thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to join this. And actually, I know Jeff, who was one of the first speakers. Jeff is from Wilkesboro as well, and it's a remarkable place. So if you ever get the chance to come visit us, I would definitely encourage you to. But my own story, you know, she read the resume and the bio, but my own story is sort of interwoven with this issue. I grew up here in Wilkesboro, had a pretty easy childhood growing up, and then right when I graduated high school in 2004, that was sort of the beginning of the opioid epidemic and this issue. And a number of the folks that I went to school with got involved in this issue. I did too. It was a major disruption in my life. And, I spent a little bit of time in jail over it. But I was lucky and I was able to come back and get back on my feet, go to law school, graduate, pass the bar exam, and go to work and things like that. So it's always been sort of a part of my interest to give back and to make sure that others have that chance too. But I did come home in 2014 to practice law. The issue was still, a major issue here where I'm from, and it was interesting because the rest of the world wasn't paying attention to it at that point and wasn't talking about it. And I remember trying to pitch an article to a think tank in Washington D.C., the Center for American Progress, about, hey, there's this issue is one of the biggest things going on in the country. We need to be talking about it. And they had no idea what I was talking about. And that was January of 2014. And then you started to see the Atlantic started to put out articles about, people are dying of despair and the overdose issue. And eventually by 2015, people in DC started to pay attention. And you saw a little bit of talk about it during the 2016 election. Some of the candidates and President Trump got a lot of support from some of the places like West Virginia and places that had gone through this issue. But so folks are now starting to realize what's going on, but I don't know. We may have gotten put on the back burner again with everything that's going on because of COVID, with the economic crisis. There's just a host of issues going on, and it's easy to lose track of this one. But one of the things that I think we have to, the leading cause of death for Americans under 50 right now is drug overdose. And, you won't hear a single campaign ad about that. You don't hear too many politicians in their speeches mention this issue, even though, we talk a lot about gun violence and gun violence prevention, and that's important. We talk a lot about climate change. We talk a lot about a lot of these other issues that impact people directly, but, this is a big thing, and it deserves a more prominent role in our politics. And in order to make that happen, we have to get engaged. As folks have been saying, not for us, but with us. And in order for people to listen, we have to have folks register to vote. We have to show up to town halls. We have to write letters to the editor and things like that. And, has been talked about this issue right now after it had been getting better for, I think, a few years because of the isolation, because of COVID, because of the economic impact. There's going to be a lot of folks out there who are struggling and who are going to be, tempted to fall back into something, or more folks falling into it. So we actually have to double our efforts, because there's going to be a lot of folks in need. And then after this, there's also going to be a lot of folks who deserve that second chance and need to come out of the shadows. And, one issue is getting folks the treatment and the access to recovery and mental health and substance abuse treatment. But the other issue is what happens to folks after that. All the barriers. One of the biggest issues that people talk about is this lack of economic mobility. How come folks who are sort of low income or working class or things like that, how come they can't rise up and get back into the middle class? But there are so many barriers that we put up to do that. Whether that is, the ban the box issue and the barriers to employment. I was lucky to get where I am, but there wasn't a single interview that I went through where it didn't come up. And it comes up still for me. And she mentioned the leadership fellowship that I did. When I got accepted, I had to do a special phone call with them to make sure that I'm okay. It's been 9 years that I've been, past my issue, and still, I've got to have that extra conversation. But for other folks who don't have the opportunities that I do, or sort of the support system, you can only imagine how tough it is. And especially if you're 6 months into recovery or a year or something like that, it's a hard thing. So we have to focus on how do we get folks those doors open up for them. And the other thing is, getting back into the workforce. There's, I think, something like in North Carolina, there's 1 million North Carolinians without a driver's license because of an unpaid fine, because they missed a court date. That's a barrier to mobility. That's a barrier to getting back in the workforce. And I know, it's not just when you go through this issue that maybe you got sentenced to a felony or you spent, some time in prison. There's a lot of things that come with that. Maybe you lost your kids to social services and you had to fight to get them back. You piled up court debt and unpaid legal fees and things like that. There's a myriad of issues that you have to deal with once you get clean and start to get into recovery. So I think thinking about that and starting to take ownership of it is important too. But I want to leave folks with some hope and some inspiration, because people aren't going to do this for us. Folks in DC are starting to pay attention to this issue, but ultimately we are going to have to get involved at the local level. Get on local zoning boards so we can get, the neighborhood will allow a recovery center in it. We have to, show up to town hall meetings and things like that. So, folks can help to do these reentry programs, but also, it's not just voting isn't enough. And we also have to become leaders, because the best leaders are people who've gone through stuff themselves. There's that saying that, no vice, no virtue. I think Lincoln is the one who said it, but, people who've gone through something develop empathy, they develop character, they develop resilience. And those are the qualities of leadership. The things that we've all gone through are the things that it takes in order to be a productive member of society, be somebody who cares about other people. And so it's important that we vote and we participate in this election, but it's more important that we open up about what we've gone through as a way of helping others, because we should see ourselves as resilient people and people who have so much to offer the world. So part of reducing the stigma is just ourselves having that vulnerability and being able to open up about it and trying to make a contribution. So thank you for having me on here, and I hope I didn't go on for too long.
That was great. Thank you so much. I think one of the most important things you said is that voting's not enough. I think right now, we have a huge push to vote because we're in the middle of an election, and it's a really important election. And it's not enough. We have to keep doing the work once we've finished with the election. And we don't have to do it by ourselves. I mean, that's why we have to get out there and really connect with people, because nobody can do this by themselves. It's just like recovery. But you said something else that that stood out to me about busting stigma and about the qualities that we gain when we are in recovery. But the other thing is that we tend to take on the stigma. We tend to own that stigma ourselves, right? Which is what tells us that our voice doesn't matter, which is what tells us that what we have to say isn't really worth hearing, or that we're not important enough, or we're intimidated by the process, or what have you. We have to shed that stigma if we expect other people to get rid of it themselves. And that's something we have to do as a community. So thank you so much. That was awesome. Okay, Jeff Breedlove, another one of my pals from Georgia. See, if you get involved in this, you get to help bring the people in. So I brought my favorites. So Jeff is the Chief of Communications and Policy for the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, which, if you're not familiar, definitely check out the Georgia Council on Facebook or on their website, because they do a lot of really good work here in Georgia. Jeff has a really long history in politics, which is what makes him kind of uniquely qualified to do this work. He's a person in long-term recovery, but he also has a long history in politics. He was the chief of staff for the DeKalb County Commissioner, Nancy Jester. He was a senior staff member to Congressman Bob Barr. He was the deputy director of the governor's office of workforce development for Nathan Deal, and as a policy analyst for the Georgia State Senate. So I'm really interested to hear what Jeff has to share with us. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Leslie, so much. And I want to thank you and Claudia and Aaron and Garrett and Ryan and everybody for inviting me and for this whole series that you've been doing across the country. It's wonderful. It's a real privilege to be here. Especially hello to everybody on from Georgia. I saw quite a few folks from all over Georgia. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Georgia story tonight. The Georgia Council on Substance Abuse is celebrating 20 years this year of service to the Georgia recovery community. It's that in and of itself is an accomplishment. Our executive director is Neil Campbell, and she's also a person in long-term recovery, celebrating 30 years this year of her recovery. So we are a team of over 30 people, and we are as diverse as the mosaic of Georgia. And it's a great team that we have, and I think some of them are on this call tonight. But what we're trying to do in Georgia is really simple, but it's incredibly complicated. It's build a constituency of consequence. And I can't agree more with all the great speakers that have gone before me. So many brilliant points have been made. But at the end of the day, it's not their fault that we don't organize and speak up and speak out. Because Leslie was right. The very first thing is we have to shed the stigma ourselves, because if we don't do it, nobody else is going to. And I lived in active addiction for 30 years before I was arrested. And I was very hypocritical, in denial. I made recommendations to my bosses that just flew in the face of my own reality, because I just didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to deal with reality. But there is a sense of humility and recovery and new awakenings and new awareness. And if we're going to build a constituency of consequence, there's some things we have to accept. And we've got to be willing to recognize the reality that there's a stigma still out there, that there's people who say those people don't deserve our tax dollars because of their lifestyle choices. We have to recognize that, but we do not have to be willing to accept it. We believe at the council that recovery from substance use disorder and mental health, this is a civil rights issue. And it deserves the exact same respect and attention from elected officials, from the business community, the faith community, the education community, as every other civil rights issue, bar none, no commas, full stop with a period right there. And that's the direction we're moving in Georgia. I promise you, there's hundreds and hundreds of issues that elected officials are confronted with on any given day. You can break those down at the end of the day into two types of issues: wants versus needs. You know, it's great to live in America. I live in an in-town neighborhood in Atlanta called Grant Park, right by our zoo in the Capitol. It's a really nice place. And it's great that we can go to the Atlanta City Council and want to have millions of dollars put in for new bike lanes and really fancy bike. That's great. We ride bikes. That's a want. A need is to confront the city council, the county commissioners, the state legislature, and the members of Congress and the administration in Washington and say more people are dying from substance use disorder than anything else in the country other than COVID. That's a need, not a want. And we're not going to sit by anymore. In the 1950s, the C word was all over because there was a stigma around the C, and the C was cancer, and it was stigmatized. And it was mostly white men that were going to these jobs after the war. They moved off the farms, and they would literally die because there wasn't insurance coverage, and they would lose their job if they found out. Well, now, every October, you can go to the largest retailer in the country, Walmart, and for $7.99, get a shirt with a pink ribbon on it. And every June, the national pastime, baseball, has light blue all over the umpires and the players for cancer awareness. We've gone from a stigmatized C word to the national pastime and the largest retailer and everybody in between wanting to identify with cancer awareness and being in support of funding and research. The same with AIDS. In 1982, AIDS kind of came on the scene. It was stigmatized. There was some of the worst things said about it. If you breathe it in the air with somebody, you're going to die. Now, AIDS research is the #1 funded medical issue in the United States Congress, and members of both parties fight to get a bigger number on a piece of bill to show they care the most. We're not there yet. We have more to do. But the good news is if we organize, we can. So in Georgia, I think one of the most important things we did was we went to our General Assembly and we met with some members of the House and Senate, Democrats and Republicans, and we got them to organize something called the Working Group on Addiction and Recovery. It's basically a caucus, and it's formalized. It's a formal part of the General Assembly. And we have a Democrat co-chair in the House, African-American male, Representative Eric Allen. And we have a white senator, Randy Robertson in the Senate, who's a Republican. So we have bipartisan, bicameral co-chairs. We got over 45 active members. And I mean, they're diverse and they're certainly bipartisan. That's my first Georgia success story, is when you can get elected officials to want to organize and have meetings to promote legislation and defend you at the General Assembly. That's made all the difference. We know there's one in California. Also, we know there's one in New York. There's not too many around the country. We're happy to help you in your state. But we now have just got so much support in the General Assembly. And that's because we worked hard to build those relationships. We have our own day at the Capitol. We call it Addiction Recovery Awareness Day. We call that ARAD. In 2019, there were 750 people. In 2020, before they shut the session down, there were 1,300 people at the Capitol for ARAD. It was the largest gathering at the Capitol. The governor kicked it off. We had about 15 members speak at it. And I don't think there was a person in the Capitol that day. We gave a gift to every member on their desk. Everybody knew recovery was there that day. And we utilized social media at the same time. So it was going out beyond the Capitol. So having a day at your capital or a day in your county or in your city, that's very important. These things create legitimacy for you. Having a strong social media presence. You know, I tell people all the time, when you're getting ready to go to a new restaurant, where's the first thing you do? You get on social media to check out the reviews. People do the same thing when they're checking out your organization. Do you have 20 members or 20,000 members? So social media is how people check you out these days. And we have to build strong social media presence for our issue in our states and in our cities. I want to talk a little bit about legislative successes and failures. So for too long, we've played defense. And it's always, let's hope they don't cut us. Let's hope they don't penalize us. Let's hope they don't discriminate against us. The very first thing is to stop all that and start going on the offense. Start promoting bills. And two things happened in Georgia this year. Under Georgia law, if you encountered the police and they were going to charge you with DUI and the substance involved was alcohol, under Georgia law, a judge could grant you at their discretion a temporary driver's license to keep working because you haven't been convicted of anything. You've only been accused, right? But if it was any other substance, the judge didn't have that discretion. Now under Georgia law, until you're proven guilty in a court, judges have the discretion, if they see fit, to give you a temporary driver's license regardless of the substance. Well, that was a level of discrimination that was kind of deep. And now in Georgia, it's a little bit different. We passed a license plate, a Georgia Recovers license plate. Now, that's not going to change the history of the state of Georgia. But just like the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech have license plates and people see them on the roads and they go, you know, go Dogs or go Jackets or whatever, now they're going to see recovery is real on a license plate. And that's going to help break the stigma. So symbolic things are important and policy things are important, but everything that's passed that helps us breaks stigma. So work with your friends and allies, ask them to do a bill. The way we got the state representative to do that bill for the driver's license is we found a constituent in his district who that impacted. And it was one thing when we came from Atlanta, it was another thing when constituents came from their district. So that's why you organize. Ram talked about those RCOs. We have over 30 RCOs, or recovery community organizations, around Georgia. And to me, they're the secret of success, because those are recovery places. They're not treatment centers. They're in local communities. And while they're helping folks maintain their recovery, they also build a community. That's where we get the constituency. That's where folks go, oh yeah, I can vote. That's where they go, oh yeah, I can talk to my council member. I can talk to my governor. I can say, vote for this or vote for that. And so utilize your friends and allies around your state, because when you build that constituency, I promise you this, having been a chief of staff for folks, they're more scared of us than we are of them. And today it's even more so. And I'll tell you why. When you go to the Capitol or your city hall next time, notice that sign on the door that says no weapons allowed. It's on every entry. But there's a loophole to that. There's one weapon allowed in, and that's your smartphone. I had a chief of staff tell me a couple of months ago that now they are absolutely petrified that before the constituents even leave the building, they will tweet out something negative about that meeting. So if we utilize social media and we utilize our voice, all they want us to do is do what? Vote for them. That's their whole goal in life, is to get elected and reelected. So that's what we've done in Georgia, is we've organized, we've built relationships, we've had events. And I want to begin to end by saying, when COVID hit, we worked through COVID. We didn't let COVID stop recovery. So they suspended the General Assembly, but then they were going to start back up. So we started having virtual events, and we had a virtual town hall meeting with 500 people from around Georgia get on there. And that got their attention at the General Assembly. Then we had a car rally literally around the state capitol about 30 or 40 cars, had signs on all the cars. Nobody got out. Everybody safe social distance. The Capitol knew we were there. They knew we were there. So get creative during COVID. Don't let COVID stop recovery. And I just want to end by saying another thing that we've done, and I know others do it too, but I encourage you to do this. We just started a program today called the Georgia Votes Recovery Project. And videos will be going up of people in recovery, 30, 45 seconds, so they fit on Instagram, talking about why they vote for people who support recovery. And we did a Facebook frame, and those are populating across Georgia today that says Georgia Votes Recovery. Use every tool you can to communicate and demonstrate that we're an organized community, just like communities around other medical diseases like cancer and AIDS and Alzheimer's. And when we organize just like they do, we'll start to see success. So Leslie, I hope that was helpful. That's some of the stuff we've done in Georgia. And the council is always at your service anywhere you are to be of help.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And Jeff always answers the phone, always. And he has spent hours on the phone with me, helping me try to understand the processes in our government, and it's been incredibly helpful. So thank you for that, for being patient with me, and thanks for everything you just shared. And I think the most important thing I want to just highlight is that sometimes I think we have to look to the past in order to find our inspiration for the future, and to be reminded all the things you just said about Alzheimer's and breast cancer and HIV and AIDS and where we are today. I think that helps us to maintain our stamina to keep doing this work, because we know where we could ultimately end up. So thank you for that. That was great perspective. Okay, so our last speaker is someone that I've actually known my whole entire life. So Jerry Abramson is the former Lieutenant Governor of the state of Kentucky. He was also the mayor for so long in Louisville, Kentucky, that he is called the mayor for life there, and had actually, I think, one of the highest approval ratings for a mayor in the country. And he also worked in the Obama administration as the director of intergovernmental affairs. I do tell people not to mess with me. I'm only 1 degree of separation from a former president, so I like to throw that around sometimes. Anyway, the thing that's important for us to remember about Jerry speaking with us is that he is a lifetime resident in the state of Kentucky, which was at the epicenter of the opioid crisis. And so he comes to us not just as a person with experience in politics, but also kind of been boots on the ground with the opioid crisis for a long time. So thank you for being here, Jerry. I'll let you take it away.
Great, my pleasure. And thanks for the opportunity. You know, what we've heard from folks who are going through the issues dealing with mental health and addiction recovery is really heart-wrenching for someone like myself, who's sort of coming into this issue and listening from outside, looking and listening in. What I want to do is talk to you about the nitty-gritty. I think Jeff really gave you a great perspective on how to organize and how to get out as an organization and rally on the issues that are important to you. I want to talk about civic engagement. I want to talk about getting into the real nitty-gritty that ultimately can bring about a change at the local and state level, and sometimes even in Washington. It's amazing to me how few people know who their city council person is, or who their state's representative or state senator is. And when I say that because I used to, when I was lieutenant governor, I was mayor of Louisville for over 2 decades. So that's a city of about 750,000 people. But when I was lieutenant governor, the leadership groups around the state, Leadership Louisville, businessmen and women, Leadership Bowling Green, Leadership Lexington, they'd all come to the state capitol in Frankfurt, and I would visit with them, and I'd ask them how many people know who their state senator is. And we're in the 25 to 30%. Now, these are allegedly the leaders of these respective areas. When you would ask them about their city council person, generally it would jump up a little bit because they were a little closer to their city council. When you asked them about their school board, we were down in the single digits in terms of who their school board representative is. So the reality to start with is a clear understanding that people running for city council, people running for the school board, people running for state legislator or state senator for the most part, need others to help them. I think we're at a point in America today, at least I saw this around the country when I was assistant to President Obama for cities and states. I think we're around the country, we're at a point where some candidates would prefer you to give them your time and your effort than to write them $100 check and just move on. They want that time, they want that commitment of energy. And with that, you end up becoming a friend, an acquaintance, an individual that has sweated in August going door to door with a person running for city council or state rep, a person who was there in the winter when they were putting their campaign together in the spring, a person who's rolled up their sleeves and given their time. The candidate needs money, but they don't need the kind of money that you want to give. It's the kind of time and effort and energy that I always remembered who was out there with me. And what that does for a person who's an advocate for addiction recovery and mental health is when you're working with a person running for state legislature, working for a person running for city council, when the time comes to make the ask, you've got a relationship. And it really is a relationship game. Because if Joe or Susan is the elected official, once you've helped them get elected, the question is who they're going to listen to. So if two people walk in and you say this is important in terms of this piece of legislation dealing with housing for mental health or a job, banning the box for getting a job, you are there making that pitch. And you also had been there working in that campaign and helping when nobody else was there, helping that city council person or that state legislator get elected. The other person walks in and says, you know, the box is not that important. I'm really not that concerned about doing anything in terms of addiction. You can carry the day just based on the personal connection that you have developed with that candidate. So literally you have that civic engagement chance to make a difference starting at the local level. Now, granted, for example, take the issue of the ACA. In Kentucky, where, as was said earlier by Leslie, we have had and continue to have a major opioid addiction problem. In Kentucky, 50% of the people who are going through health assistance for their opioid problem receive that assistance through the Affordable Care Act. 50%, because we're a state that has expanded Medicaid. All right, so the point being is that when you're focused on your issue, it may be narrow, but every now and then there's something as broad as the ACA that is making an incredible difference in terms of recovery and work to assist those going through the difficult situation with opioid addiction. So you spend the time going door to door, working in the campaign, assisting, putting up yard signs, even if you can't vote. The fact that you could put up yard signs for a candidate and he or she at the city council and the state legislature level knows who you are, because there's not a lot of people engaged, but you're engaged. And then ultimately you have that opportunity when the time is right to focus on that one issue that's pending out there, or the multiple issues that are pending out there. You might even get a chance as you're walking precinct to precinct, door to door, to have a conversation with a candidate if you've got that kind of opening. That's where the nitty-gritty is, at that local level. You can make a difference. You can get them to focus on the issue that you think should be at the top of their agenda, all because you have picked up chits. Those chits were from the campaign. You were there. So many other people were not. And ultimately it creates an opportunity to make a difference for the issues that you're interested in and the candidates that you're supporting.
Thank you so much. That is, I think I see a lot of people writing comments in the chat about how important what you just shared was, and I've been jotting down things as people are talking, and what you said that I thought was so important was know your leaders. Your local leaders want your time and your efforts, and that when you put in that time and that effort, then you have their ear, and you have an opportunity to speak up. So your experience is invaluable, and we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, Jerry. We appreciate it. So that was like a good way to wind this thing up. We're pretty lucky. And I know Jerry mentioned to me that he may have to hop off. So thank you so much for being here. We're happy to have you until you need to go. You know, I wrote a few things down. Ban the box. Voting is not enough. Build a constituency of consequence. Nothing about us without us. Recovery is a civil rights issue. These are all things that are important to take away from this. And don't hop off just yet. If you think we're done, we're not done, because Aaron and or Garrett are going to show us a little bit from the platform for Vote Recovery from the Recovery Advocacy Project. And also don't forget that this is recorded and you can go back and watch it on YouTube, and please tell other people about it if they missed it.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you to all of our speakers. And for me, like the whole message that I took away today was like, this doesn't stop at voting. Like that's so powerful. And then local. So just like this doesn't stop at voting, this site will not go down after November 3rd because our work will continue. Can everybody see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? Yep. Okay. I'm going to turn off my camera so it helps with the speed. By the way, my name is Garrett Haid, a person in recovery, a little over 5 years, work for the Recovery Advocacy Project. And I'm going to do this in like 5 minutes. I'm going to do the abbreviated version just so everybody knows that this site is available. It's available to our community. It was created for our community. And it's the Recovery Voter Hub. There's a lot of tools here that we'll go over a lot of the things that we were discussing for the last hour. And we kind of broke it down into like a 4-step process. It begins with determining how recovery will influence our personal decisions at the voting block. And we heard a bunch of people today talk about the issues that they most care about. And Aaron had mentioned this in the beginning. This issue, our issues, and they span across a whole variety of things, can influence people's decision at the ballot box, right? And we did this, and this was, like Aaron said, a scientific poll, right? So this was just voters in Clark County, and a plurality of people will either switch candidates or consider switching. That is a powerful tool. I've actually talked with advocates across the country who have been using this data to reach out to elected officials, letting them know that, like, hey, this is a voting issue. It's just a way of how we refer to it, or how we how our language is referring to it. People will shift sides. They will switch candidates. So it's a very important thing. And just so you know, like this data is available to all of you. If you go to right here, step 1, organized issue voting, you have access to all the data. We put it here for our communities. And again, it'll be right here for you. You can just reference it. Scientific poll, we did this here in our county, and then like Aaron said, we did also polled our national. It was about 1,200 people. Where is it? Sorry, 1,089 people. You can come here, you can take this poll, you can share this data with anybody. But it's important to us because, candidates will listen to data. And if you say 90% of people will vote for a different side of our community, depending on how you message your campaign or your policies, like that is a powerful tool for us to have. So it's here for all of you. Like I said, I want to try to get through this in like 5 minutes. So I'm not going to spend time going line by line through it, but it's all here. A big thing that we talked about is, where is it? Judicial stuff, like people believe that judges should have more discretion when we're talking about sentencing nonviolent offenders when it comes to drug use.
Yes, that's 68 number right there.
68%, yeah. So come here, look at it, reference it. It's for you to use, and we'll go into step 2. The issues, right? Like we were all talking about massive amounts of issues that could influence the recovery arena, right? So you can come here And let's say you have to, meet with Mayor Jerry, right? And you want to talk to him about criminal justice reform, but you, like me, aren't too comfortable or confident in your knowledge about it at the time, right? So you can come here and we put together this knowledge base, and we really try to, we partner and align with a lot of people and organizations who specialize in these things. So this isn't our stuff, right? Like we just kind of put this knowledge base out here. But if you want to come and learn more about mass incarceration, you will go to a partnering organization who specializes in mass incarceration, and it will take you to their information and their knowledge base. You can learn more. Voter restoration, you want to learn about restoring your rights, and how it pertains to your specific state. Come here and look at that. Recovery support services. Anything you want to learn as it relates to the recovery community and the issues that you care about. If you are, like I said, planning to talk to the mayor or the city council member or the state representative, you can come here, gain some knowledge and kind of brush up on that kind of information. Let's go to step 3. Again, I'm trying to breeze through this. Learn about your candidates and elected officials. And we were talking about this a lot. And I want to Mark had brought it up, your homeowners association. The last time I was arrested now is over 10 years ago. When I moved to Las Vegas in the beginning of the year, I was just under 10 years. And I had had apartments before. I didn't even think about it. I applied to rent a home and was denied because of a felony arrest less than 10 years ago. I didn't have the opportunity to talk to anybody. I didn't have the opportunity to, discuss what I do now in my life in recovery or anything like that. That's when stigma turns into discrimination, right? Like somebody who is not, I haven't been arrested in almost 10 years at that point. I'm a productive member of society. I pay my taxes. I vote. I do all of these things. But I didn't. And somebody, it kind of clicked in my head, I was like, I need to go talk to that homeowners association now, even though I have a place now and I can probably move past it. But these types of things are it's held at a local issue. And for me, the first time I voted was 4 years ago. I didn't know what the difference was, and Jerry was talking about it. Like, I didn't know what the difference was between a U.S. representative and a state representative, or a state senator and a U.S. senator, or that they were two separate things. I had no idea. I didn't know what the attorney general was responsible for. And I think a lot of the times, in our community, like, oh, I can't put up a recovery residence in my neighborhood. I'm going to send an email to the president of the United States right now and get this all hashed out. However, you could probably just take it to your city council or your local zoning board. This happened 2 weeks ago. I had a friend who overdosed, and thank God he survived, but he was revived by naloxone by a police officer who carried naloxone on him, right? And I think about that is like, if the friend had died in my county, the sheriff here has a policy that his officers do not carry naloxone, and they won't carry naloxone. So as an elected official who has a policy that our lives aren't worth saving, if my friend would die in a different county, if my friend would have overdosed in a different county, he may not be alive today. So to think about like how important our local races are, like those are the policymakers who affect our lives every day. It's not always, in this presidential election is sucking up a lot of air, but the people that we are going to encounter and the issues that we are going to encounter at a daily basis are held at a local level. So the Recovery Advocacy Project's whole thing is like think and act locally, right? Like this starts at the bottom and it moves up to the top. So you can come here, you can learn about, what your city council members are responsible for, what your judges are responsible for, what your school board members are responsible for. I'm going to ask they enter the homeowners association, maybe throw that on the page. But you can come here and just like me, who wasn't very confident of the political system or the knowledge that I had, I wish I had something like this at that time. So that's step 3. And then step 4, vote. So we created this here. You can come right here. It's a quick access. You can register to vote directly online. You can check your voter registration status. You can learn about absentee and early voting. So you can make a plan to get that done if you haven't done so already. If you're not too confident, like we talked, like grab some friends, like we're a community, right? Like, hey, let's get this done together. Let's talk to our community. Who are the people that are supporting us? Who are the elected officials? And let's get those people in office. You can find your polling place. You can look at registration deadlines. I'm pretty sure Aaron, while I'm talking, will put the recovery pledge. If everybody would take it, it's just saying that not only will you vote, but you will grab a friend to vote with you. The last
I put it in the chat box, Garrett.
Cool, thanks. And the last thing I want to just highlight, and there's a lot more here, but like I said, I'm doing the abbreviated version. I don't want to take up everyone's time. If you are going to the polling, if you are going to vote and you encounter, they stop you from voting, no ID, whatever the issue may be, you're not registered with the right address. There's a number of issues that can happen. You can come here to Voting Rights. You can report voter violations if you think your rights have been denied and you're not being able to vote. You can learn about voter suppression and voter ID laws, and again, voter restoration, which we were talking about before. So there's a ton of stuff here. Aaron, if I missed anything, jump in, but use this platform. It's not going down. It's for our community, and we hope you all take advantage of it. And I thank you all again for spending this time with us tonight. This is an important discussion that will continue on after Election Day. Aaron, did I miss anything?
No, you really didn't. The last thing I just add is I get a lot of, I'll get door hangers, I'll get mailings, from candidates. And the first thing I do on them is to look to see if there's anything around addiction on them. If there's not, I go to the website. I go to look at the stance on the website. If I'm not satisfied with the stance, then I contact the candidate. And I'll say that the only time that I've ever crossed party lines to vote for a candidate that's not the party that I normally identify with is because they had a better stance on recovery. Like I have done that, and I've even written a platform, for a candidate of the opposite party after a conversation in a coffee shop around addiction and recovery, and he didn't have a stance on addiction. So we talked about it. We talked about all the different issues, and then he had a stance on addiction. And he asked me to help with the language on it, and and that's kind of what this is about. Like take the D and the R off the candidates' names. How would you know who to vote for? Well, it's the candidate that speaks to you, right? It's the platform and the issues that speak to you. And so we need to start thinking in a way that, if we all thought, is this candidate earning my vote or not? If we all thought like that, and that's where you grow your power, right? As an organized constituency of consequence that Jeff was referring to. That's how you build it. But we got to know what we care about first. And so we hope that this is the start for you all to start thinking about that and holding yourself and your candidates running for office to the issues, to the things that you care about. That's what Vote Recovery is all about. I want to thank Leslie. Do you want to say anything else, Leslie? I want to thank our speakers for doing an amazing job. And go to recoveryvoices.com/vote and just dive in. That issue section. It's a good start. Have that be the beginning of something. So, Leslie, if you want to chime in, thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody for being here. The only last thing I wanted to say is please encourage other people, remind them that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Doing all this research on candidates can be really overwhelming. And instead of shutting down and not doing that, remind people they can find people they trust, who they can talk to about candidates and get more information so they can make informed decisions. So thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.